7 o'clock.
It is.
Thank you, Mike, for, call this council meeting to order, City of University Heights City Council meeting, June 10th, 2025. We have 4 council present and Stephanie Gunn is on a family vacation. So the other 4 are present tonight and we have several people on Zoom tonight. So thanks everybody for coming and we have several people in the audience tonight. Thank you very much. So we'll go to approval of minutes, May 13th and May 27th. Are there any additions or corrections to either minutes?
There was one typo in the minutes from May 27 that I've already fixed, where it's not the 24 to 24 year, but the 24 to 25 year.
Okay, so that's been fixed in the last,
I fixed it. Yes.
okay, very good.
And
Are there,
send to public, so.
are there any other corrections or additions? Hearing none, both minutes are approved as stated by unanimous consent. Okay, public input. Would anyone who's on Zoom or in the room like to speak now? We're going to have a presentation by Think Iowa City on proposed trails of the Swisher Track. And I'll let the public speak later on there too, if you're here to listen to some of that. But you can speak now on any subject you'd like. Does anybody want to? Okay, very good. So we'll go on to the Think Iowa City presentation on proposed trails on and off Swisher Track land. And Josh Schomburger, welcome. Sorry about the sun.
That's okay. I'm just gonna sit here. I apologize for these guys with my back here. So yeah, thanks for having me. I've been excited to come and share some of this work that we've been doing that really concluded earlier this year, but because of a request by the University of Iowa to kind of delay the presentation until they got through session. We are here now in May, now that the session is complete, and particularly since it revolves around a discussion that'll be needed between University Heights and the Board of Regents University as it relates to a good chunk of the land in this area that they own. We have had several conversations with the university, and I'm very confident that there's not going to be any problem whatsoever with some sort of use agreement or partnership with University Heights as it relates to the plan that's been developed, if the council and the community so chose to want to develop it out as it sees fit or something close. So before I get going, I don't know if Nick wants to just give a little update on how we kind of got here when we first met for coffee.
Sure.
A year ago now.
Yeah, and it really started when Josh had come to the meeting, just as kind of the annual check-in. And had mentioned that, one of the things they provide to communities is the kind of visioning piece. And so we have some public lands in town, and so we kind of walked those. Had coffee, chatted about the use of the lands, and it kind of broke into 2 different pieces. One was trails in the forest that you can see up there. We had started on trails at this time when we initially met in kind of, I guess it would have been spring of 2024, I think. But the trails are just on University Heights property, and I've come to learn a lot more about trails since this process started. So the trails that are there work to walk through, but they're not, as Ryan has pointed out, and the trail builders have pointed out, probably not a sustainable way to do trails. So that was one piece, and Think Iowa City funded all the work that you're about to hear about through Ryan and through others. But then we also had a visioning piece of it where we talked about some of the other public lands, and Tim was very involved with that. Just kind of the idea that what we're learning from the community is that there's a lot of interest in the trails and also a lot of interest in benches and lights and signs and things that, street lights and signs, things that show people they're in University Heights, that have maybe something unique about them so that when you see them, you're still in University Heights as opposed to Iowa City. And so that's been another group that's been meeting. We did some visioning there, work session, and then they're just kind of off and running. A lot of people from the community have kind of been running with different ideas. So I could talk on and on about this, but that's kind of how we got here. Think Iowa City funded all of this, and so now we have kind of a finished product for Josh to talk about.
So, I want to just start off by saying this is really just, a vision and a plan, a proposed document. It's really nothing more than that. At the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the residents of University Heights and you as its leadership to determine whether or not any activation of this plan in any capacity makes sense. So want to be obviously super clear on that. That goes with any city or any plan. But as we were discussing, Nick and I, maybe a year ago, on how we can help with some of these, this activation of public space and bringing greater awareness to the city, University Heights, and some of these capacities. The nature area here stood out to me immediately, and I do know that there's some trails back there. I've actually snuck in there on my bike and ridden them a few times, and it's a beautiful piece of property that we brought out Brad Friedoff, who's the Johnson County Conservation Director, and walked it, and he was like a kid in a candy store. He's like, this piece of property has never been developed, and he's looking at trees and grapevines. That one day he looked at that one grapevine, I thought he was gonna just explode. He was so excited. So, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of property that's back there, and we started brainstorming some ideas or fun things you could do, and, you know, I kind of joked that maybe University Heights can be known for a Morel Fest every year. We could tie it into Maggie's and coffee and do Morel pizzas and all sorts of fun things and do a Morel hunt, but, the trails really stepped up. So, we got to work and on a possible vision for how the community could really, take advantage of this area and turn it into a community betterment or quality life asset for the residents first. As we go through this, certainly there's a bike component and a cycling component, but as I was telling the mayor earlier, this is really, and this comes from me being a very big cyclist, and I know Mike's a big cyclist, and Troy and others. This is not gonna be a destination that cyclists come to and park their cars and wanna go ride. You're not gonna have traffic doing that. This will be an extension of a community betterment or park area for the neighborhood. There will certainly be cyclists like myself that come on the trail up Hawkins there and dip in on the backside and maybe ride a couple laps and then head back out south of University Heights and go down towards Terry Trueblood. The city of Iowa City recently completed a similar project, far more specific to just bikes, across from Mayflower Dorm. If you haven't been down there, you should park and go check it out. It's called the Ice House. And it's some single track that surrounds that nice piece of wooded property by the church. And there's an old ice house foundation that they've incorporated into that feature. So, it's a way to kind of prepare for that. So we knew that the best in the business for this kind of work was Bolton and Meek, a firm that really specializes in this sort of landscape architect and this sort of design work. So I initially got a hold of Ryan Anderson, who's our chief partner there. And he aligned us also with a firm called Backyard Trails, which really specializes in the type of trails and the topography of the land and what sort of material to use for erosion and things like that. And so between the two of them, we hired them, as Nick said, to put together this plan. We purposely have called it a multi-use trail master plan because it's fully intended for walking dogs. And then also there's several sections that really are probably a little bit more specific to bike, some single track stuff available. So I'd like to turn it over to Ryan. He intended to be here today, but he had a pretty good complication come up. So he's here by Zoom and might get a little clunky at times here going through the slides, but between the two of us, hopefully we'll answer the questions, paint the picture, and then ultimately leave it with you to determine how you and the city want to move forward and if you want to do anything with this. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself and then also talk a little bit about Backyard Trails before you get into the slides?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. I'm also appreciative of your flexibility to bring me on remotely here. This was a really fun project, speaking personally. Great kind of untapped resource. I'm a landscape architect here with Bolton & Mank. I've been practicing in Eastern Iowa for about 10, 11 years now. And born and raised Cedar Rapids, so down in this neck of the woods all the time. Parked in this commuter lot and was really excited to hear about Josh and Think Iowa City's and University Heights collaborative effort on thinking about this area a little bit differently. Beyond what it serves today for the community. So when we first got the call, we did a little bit of research on our end and partnered with really kind of a local living legend, I would say, in the trail development world, Ken Barker with Backyard Trails. They're located up here in Cedar Rapids as well. They're doing a lot of work. You mentioned Brad Friedoff with other county conservation groups, including Lynn County, like as soon as or as much as this week, they're up in Pinnakin Ridge or Pinnakin Park. So a great kind of three-pronged approach here with Think Iowa City and University Heights working together to kind of define a direction and vision and opportunity. Bolton Mank is coming in here to kind of oversee the project and help establish these connections between the municipal built environment, the streets and the parking lots, and stormwater drainage and things of that nature at the municipal scale. But then Backyard Trails is coming in really as the kind of trails specific expert, and they had a lot of fun I'll say as part of this project too, walking these woods, walking the existing social trails, looking at places that there could be opportunities for improvement, and all three of us working together back and forth to learn and to land on a plan that I think is the best and highest use for this space.
Thanks, Ryan. So Ryan, because you're remote, I don't have a clicker here, so you just have to say change slides and Mike will change the slide. That's how it works. So if you should see it on your screen, we can kind of walk through the plan. And I think it's important to tee it up on the front end, maybe just briefly go over a couple of the preliminary concepts, but then we'll spend most of our time on the preferred concept, if that works with you.
That sounds great. Let's land on the next slide then, and I'll go through a quick overview of the project, but I'll make sure I focus kind of on this section 4 at the end. So whenever we do a project like this that's design oriented, we always try to get together some of the brains that have been thinking about it longer than maybe we even have as part of our first introduction to the project. So we sat together with Nick Herbold and Think Iowa City and Backyard Trails and myself, and had coffee next door. And after that went out on site. So there's a summary of kind of that process here in section 1. That's how we developed our understanding. So a little bit of background in that section. As part of our review on site, we also we took photos, observed significant trees, observed things like spaces where, boy, if we had a trail connection to right here, this would be a great spot to like overlook this whole ravine area. So starting to kind of identify some of those early opportunities. Also doing a SWOT exercise to, again, kind of learn some of the background about considerations for this property. And then also as part of that, we actually walked all the existing social trails to translate where those lay out in relationship with a mapping software. From that, we transitioned into preliminary design, came up with 2 different concepts. From there, we also developed associated cost opinions and a quick kind of description about what the differences are between each of those, which I'll highlight today briefly. And then from there, usually when you have 2 options for consideration, we liked a little bit of each. And so that's what resulted in our preferred design, which we're calling a final concept here, with an updated cost opinion that picked up the changes that were made. And some suggestions for next steps. So we'll jump to the next slide. Next slide. So again, just highlighting all the players. I forgot to mention earlier that Dr. Rick Hobson was also involved in our early discussions of the site and kickoff. Apologies for missing his name there. He was a great advocate for the project and has been part of the development of the existing trail system, and so a great resource to this project. Next slide. During our initial kickoff meeting, we like to establish design team goals to serve as something of a North Star throughout the project. And so those are distilled in these 5 points. The goal for this project are to enhance accessibility, increase connectivity, provide a safe environment for a range of users, pertinent to what Josh was mentioning earlier, that we're looking for provide trails for people walking dogs in addition to other modes of transportation potentially, or people of different abilities. Wanting to design sustainable trails. And so that relates to the location, the slope, and the width of those trails and what that surfacing is in different areas, whether soils are wet or not, or in higher trafficked areas and others, things like that. And then really the whole point of this is develop a plan that's feasible, has been truthed, both through on-site walking and kind of desktop research that I'll highlight, and then package it together in this format that helps you guys go out and generate support and grant funding. Next slide. Mentioned this really started off last fall, which was a beautiful time of year to work on a trails project, so appreciate that timing. And it wrapped up in December. Next slide. Mentioned potential partnership with the University of Iowa. It's important to note that the combined forested area is about 36 total acres, 12 of which are owned by University Heights, generally in the southeast third. The remainder on the west and north of that are adjacent Finkbine and the commuter lot, and owned by the Board of Regents and operated by University of Iowa. Most of the area remains undeveloped because it's really hard to develop houses and things like that and parking lots back there. So steep ravines, mature deciduous trees, but also that's all framed in by an urban boundary, whether that's residential development, parking lot, or railroad tracks. Of note, University of Iowa, it was a partner as part of the development of the One University Place project, and has supported that kind of prairie trail north of the condo building to the north of you guys here. Moving on. Here's our SWOT exercise. It's city-owned land today. That's an important detail. Capital is available to implement into the project. What's really unique about this site is that you walk into it really about 20, 30 feet and you feel like you're somewhere totally different. So that sense of, there's terms today about forest bathing, and the therapeutic and kind of health benefits to just getting out of the city and into nature is a really important value to this project. What we wanted to do, what we also identified for weaknesses as part of this exercise, making sure that the cost is right size of the project, keeping taxes low for local residents. There's stormwater infrastructure today that just kind of outlets into these ravines. That's going to be influential in the way that we locate the trail alignments. And then, this is a relatively remote site adjacent to residential neighborhood. So things like parking and entry points are certainly more challenging compared to an open field situation. And then also wayfinding with the number of mature trees, which is a strength in one way, does require that there's some wayfinding considerations as part of this. So we identify a clear jumping off point and potentially signage to help people navigate the trail system. Opportunities, it's already a well-utilized social trail. We saw a lot of folks walking very adorable dogs while we were out there, and a wide range of users and physical ability, which was great to see. Prior to the go-ahead on this project, the University of Iowa was made aware that things were in discussion for this space. So I think that's something to consider for future partnerships. One of the benefits of trails are they're providing access not only for residents, but they're also providing access for forest management practices. So you can get deeper into the forest. You can just have an easier time to get equipment out there to take care of potential environmental issues that you may want to get into with invasive species or similar. And similarly with stormwater management, again, you're just providing access and kind of highlighting opportunities for improvement along the way. As I talk about all the, I should mention I have 3 dogs, so focused on the dogs, I guess, on that walk. But there's a potential there when you have things like that going on, potential for pedestrian and bicycle conflict. So really, as part of our design process, wanted to make sure that we're thinking about socially sustainable trails in addition to, just kind of environmentally sustainable trails. There's as you get deeper into the woods, considerations about ability to police the trails, and just want to make sure that's addressed as part of this. Potential for risk, thinking about what happens, what happens if something does happen while you're out there, who's kind of the at-fault party, and navigating that is always part of the trail design. Usually these are at risk on the user side, but again, just something to highlight early. The other consideration then is because we're up against a lot of neighbors wanting to make sure that the proposed trail system out here provides enough of a buffer to make sure that they don't feel like we're walking through people's backyards. Okay, so that was kind of a framework, goals, and SWOT. We'll move along. We'll go through this section quicker here. I'll do next slide for the site analysis section. Here's how those property boundaries break out for University Heights and the Board of Regents. Area highlighted in cyan there, or aquamarine, is all owned by University Heights. You can see the darker blue lines there are all topographic contours that start to illustrate the way stormwater moves through the site, and the ravines kind of bisect or separate out the different portions of the site. Next slide. I mentioned we did walk the existing social trails. Those are marked out in dark green dashed lines here. We have a GPS software. A lot of bicyclists may know Strava. Use that to mark the trails. So again, we could understand what it feels like to walk these trails, but also see what that looks like when you lay it across an actual map, which is what we use for our design efforts. So of note, the existing trail kind of follows along the center spine of existing topographic lobes out here, because that's easier to lay trails out on. As we talk about sustainable trail infrastructure from an environmental standpoint, it's maybe counterintuitive, but when you're laying trails out, it's actually better to land on either side of those lobes, because water is moving faster across those areas and not effectively being funneled down the center line of the trail, which can cause long-term washout. So again, that's just what's out there today. We'll do the next slide. Actually, one moment, worth noting, the lime green to the west is an existing off-street trail that wraps around the forested area there. And then also showing some other kind of local off-street trails in brown on Melrose to the south. So some adjacent trail connection opportunities. Now, next slide. This is outside your guys' window effectively, so I'll move through these pretty quick, but that's what's out there today. The mown grass trails on the left are north of University Heights development. When you get further out into the woods, they actually do have some markers already out there you can kind of see on the right side of that center image. But then as far as access into the woods go, it's really pretty, you got to know that they're there to find them. So that's evidence there on the picture on the right. I'll do next slide. So I mentioned when we were out there, we walked all over these woods. All these kind of circular pink icons are identified as view shed opportunities. So we walked up to these points, which are generally located on high points. The ones with a full kind of concentric circles are kind of 360 views. Some others are more directional around the outside of the forest. Then we also used blue here to highlight kind of where the center line of the ravine areas are for reference. And again, that's kind of overlaid lightly with that dashed green to see where we're crossing water today. And then in purple, I should say, potential entry points. And some of those are existing today. So those are all included here. Again, this is really a different version of the same map. Basically, the warmer the color, the steeper the topography. So it's another way of representing and visualizing what it is we're looking at designing on top of here. Do the next slide. All right, so now that we kind of got all that site understanding in place, we proceeded into preliminary design where we came up with two different concepts that I'll quickly touch on here. This was concept one. You can see in this concept, the primary difference between this and number two was that white paved trail in the southwest corner of the site. There's not a lot of topography there, and there's an existing parking lot there. So there's a logic to locating a paved trail in that location. I'll highlight as part of the next concept why we ended up deviating away from that approach. But you'll also see some additional colors here. In addition to that dark green, there's a blue color kind of in the middle portion of the forest, and then a black that's on the kind of northwest portion. Those are all similar to skiing, kind of different designations for trail challenge level. So green is easier, lower topography, usually wider trails. Blue is a little more technical, hilly, maybe some rocky or wooded wood elements in there that are going to be more challenging unless you're able-bodied. And then black is extremely difficult where you're crossing creeks on boardwalks, and maybe it's big limestone blocks and things like that that allow you to see more of a forest. However, it's not going to be easy to get where you're trying to go. So this was our first crack at laying out different trail alignments with consideration of topography, existing water, those different view sheds, and then of course the different site points of entry. Let's jump to the next one. So you can see there's some similarities between these two. Generally easier trails on the east portion of the site. The blue trails here in the middle are significantly different. They originate from either side of the northern One University Place building, and then basically loop out to the end of that lobe where there's a nice view shed opportunity, and then loop back. What's nice about that is there's not much water crossing. And then again, with the black trail here, instead of following along the low point of that ravine, trying to get up a little bit higher and work around these different areas closer up to the road. I should mention on the left side here, just some examples of what a dirt trail looks like. That'd be something like you'd see in the green there. Paved trail in the middle is concrete or asphalt. And then boardwalk crossings in the bottom left there. That was actually constructed by Backyard Trails. Forgot to mention also at the northern limit of Sunset Street, there's a white paved trail. So it was important to us that there was a paved trail portion as part of each of these concepts that'd be fully ADA compliant. And so that was another primary differentiator between this concept and the previous concept one. All right, next slide. So this was really just kind of an exercise to see what ballpark we're in for pricing at the master plan level. There's a element of contingency that's baked into these different estimates, but it helped us to understand the kind of ballpark again that we're falling into. So relatively similar cost between the two. Concept one totaling out to 736,300. Concept two totaling out to 690,100. The primary difference there was the just quantity of trail in concept one. There was just more length. If you jump to the next slide. When we talked through the two different concepts, here's where we kind of landed for direction in the final. Again, A had more length. Kind of figured if we're going to do this project, we should do our best to optimize what we have and get as much trail in as we can. There was a strong preference getting the paved trail away from that southwest corner to facilitate future development in that area. And so that trail actually was proposed to be relocated on that loop that's north of University Place that you'll see in the next concept here. There was a preference not to increase pedestrian and vehicular traffic through the existing neighborhood. So we're not necessarily highlighting on-street trails on already narrow streets through this neighborhood. Don't want this to feel like a neighborhood that's also a highway. So the trail should function as a local amenity and not a regional destination. I think Josh kind of prefaced that as well. There's a lot of really great mountain bike opportunities in this area. And while this will be a great amenity in addition to that larger system, this is different than something like the Ice House, where it's less mountain bicycle centric, really more about getting people out and into the woods and able to go for a walk. That's important to recognize, I think, with the University of Iowa as well, with all the students that kind of navigate these different areas, trying to design in a way that is, again, socially sustainable, making sure there's not people moving at high speed on a bicycle next to people that are not while they're walking. Also to that effect, it's not a commuter route, it's a recreational trail system through the woods. And then connections to existing off-street trail system is important to create a new experience along a longer string of regional trail amenities. So again, this is kind of a pearl on a larger necklace, if you will. Next slide. So this is kind of same song, but with a preferred concept. It is really a melding of concepts 1 and 2 previously. I'll highlight in particular that white kind of upside down U shape there, extending from the east and west edges of the northern residential building. That seems to be an area that's easy to provide some level of vehicle access to on the west side there, which is kind of highlighted in orange. So you have a truly accessible parking space, which you can then get out into the woods and make a return. But then that also does interconnect with the larger trail system that has been very much aligned with existing topography to be both sustainable and cost effective in its alignment. So really optimizing the amount of trail, but doing it in a way where we're not having to construct a lot of different boardwalks or navigate steep slopes. You'll see there's no longer any black on here, really, again, thinking about making this available to a wide range of users, wanting to top it out at that kind of blue designation. The dark green then are going to be more similar to what's out there today, where they're relatively narrow dirt paths, maybe 3 feet wide, single track. And we did really like having, recognizing that access point off of Sunset Street is one of the primary existing points of entry for neighbors in the area, and so that's a bolder, lighter color green there that would be double track, so 6 feet wide compared to 3 feet wide. Again, if you're inviting more people to come out in this space, creating a simple loop system for them to go out and come back, where you can walk 2 by 2 or cross paths with another without having to step off the trail and back on. Also worth noting, the kind of area to the northeast of that double wide trail, or double track unpaved trail, would be through a area that is currently kind of utilized as a private property and storage, and so that's something of note, that the trail does wind through that area off of Gulfview Avenue there. What we like, I think, most about this plan is it achieves all the different goals that we'd come up through, optimizing trail, creating opportunities for connection and accessibility, serving a wide range of users. It really seemed to be the best of all the different options that we'd considered up to this point. On the next slide. Again, just a few precedent images. The number of there's still a number of creek crossings in here that can be achieved both through a boardwalk crossing or through rock armoring, depending on the length and the intensity of the stormwater movement. But again, there's that example of what that paved trail could look like north of University Place. Then again, single track trail there on the right. So that'd be essentially doubled in width for the area of Sunset Street.
Ryan, I'll just jump in quick. For any of you listening or in the room that haven't seen this sort of trail system or these setups, you can go see them at any time in Coralville. They have a tremendous number of these along Woodpecker Trail, right there on Tom Harkin Trailhead, going all the way out into out by the baseball fields. So they've used similar partners, Bolton and Meek and Backyard Trails, to do a lot of their trail development, and have both boardwalk and rock armoring in some of these lower line wood areas.
Yes, and Ken was very happy to have an engineer on board. He's, that those two pictures in the middle were both, done by Backyard Trails, but he really valued our expertise in house here to do more of a hydrologic study and make sure that the armoring is an actual engineered connection across the water. So we've really got whatever level of intensity of design or implementation is required, we're covered here on this team. We'll do next slide. So these are new pictures that came from a desire just to, really throw the kitchen sink at it, if you will. It's more than just trails. It's also, again, that accessible parking opportunity, creating a more formal overlook opportunity, seating throughout the trail system. As we talk about wayfinding, creating that trailhead kiosk with signage and making sure that there's opportunities for folks to figure out where they're going before they get there as part of the design process. Next slide. To that effect, this is a quick kind of trailhead mock-up. So this is down at the end of the drive, north of the Northern One University Place building. You can see the driveway there that connects down to the lower level parking. So it's really kind of a stub of 4 different parking stalls here. Either 1 or 2 of those could be made accessible. Picked this location after looking at a number of different options throughout the kind of project limits. This is both level and already set up to respond to traffic. Most of the roadways that kind of dead end in the neighborhood to the east are all pretty quick drop offs once you get past the end of the road, quite literally. And so we wanted to look for a place where we could kind of tack on to existing infrastructure to save on costs, but do it in a location that was also pretty level, um, to make sure that we're able to provide that accessible design and make it easy for folks to get there. So in addition to the parking stalls here, there's kind of a semicircle for that kiosk to be located. And then one of the considerations that we built into this plan was some robust evergreen screening. So making sure that any headlights that are projecting directly east from here, and as that building is oriented slightly to the northeast instead of true east-west, making sure that there's no opportunities for headlight light pollution to spill out from this trailhead. So that'd be achieved through layered vegetation or other means that could be defined during final design. There's also a pretty steep longitudinal slope running down this driveway. And so making sure those water is moving across this trailhead parking area, that we're catching that in a stormwater detention basin there on the north side of the parking lot before it runs off into the landscape, and with its erosive power, just making sure that we're de-energizing that before treating it. So this concept has a little more trail than either of the previous two. It also has the addition of this parking lot, which wasn't included in concepts 1 or 2, or the trailhead. And so that's where you see the increase in cost by approximately 100,000 compared to the previous 2. We feel this is a much more a design that's much more in alignment with accessibility considerations. It's not a separate element as part of a larger design. It's really integrated and serves as a jumping off point for the rest of the trail system. It also includes the stormwater detention basin, which is not included in some of the other concepts. I'll mention at this level of design, we do have that 20% contingency baked in, but all these different costs are truthed based on either past bid work that Bolton Make has done or built work that Ken with Backyard Trails has provided. So he reviewed these in depth, as did we, from an engineering and a trail designer mindset both, and feel like we're providing a conservative estimate here. Should be noted as well that this is everything, all inclusive. One exercise that we did not go through formally was to study different phasing opportunities as part of this, and so that's something that we could consider as we move through this process and break the project down into chunks as necessary. To that effect, I'll also mention that it was developed with the ability to implement a phase 1 approach that's only owned by University Heights. So that's where that double track trail is, making sure that we could, if we were shovel ready as soon as this fall, that there's a project that we could move through design on with no property acquisition or adjacent property owner partnership in the short term. Although we sure hope, and sounds like they will be partners long term. Do next slide.
I think we can go through these pretty quick. Brian, we'll open it up for.
Yep, I think I probably covered most of that already. Yeah, I think you guys got the this document's intended to stand on its own, and so you're welcome to read this. But I'll open it up for questions.
So Yeah, we're happy to answer questions. Again, as I said in the beginning, this is really just an exercise and an opportunity that we move forward. At the end of the day, like I said, it's up to the city, the residents here and the council. I do know that if this was of interest, whether it's phasing or all in one, as Ryan mentioned at the very beginning of the document there, the goal would be to get this moved to a state to where we can present it as a working document for grants. We feel pretty confident in our conversations with Brad Friedhoff at Johnson County Conservation and the work we've already done in other parts of the community that this would be an attractive project for various grants. I think the overall goal, which we feel good about, but you never know, I mean, things change daily now, is, the goal would be to get about 80% of this funded by grants. So we probably have about 20% that would need to be raised here locally or somehow allocated in a phasing stage of some kind through the city. Whether that be through future hotel motel tax would qualify for this or other things, however the city determined to do that, but we would work really hard. We would put our team on it as we've continued. Nick Pfeiffer, who has worked with Nick Herbold, who is our Director of Public Affairs. He does this all day long. He sits in his office with the headphones and listens to all those boring committee meetings to identify where money is. And this would be one of the things he would be tasked with keeping an eye on and moving forward. So happy to answer questions. It was a long presentation, but it was a lot of work. So thanks for your time.
It was a wonderful presentation, and I think the city would like to hear kind of first impressions from people who are attending on Zoom or in the room. Does anyone want to speak about their thought? Okay, Lisa.
Because
Lisa, can you come, just sit in Josh's chair because this will pick up on the microphone.
personally, after spending a lot of time on the trail, Mike and I have walked it, we snowshoed in the winter down in there to all ends on university property and University of Heights property. I would be really excited to be able to have a group that, have the city move forward to be able to develop the trails. Shoveling mulch myself hasn't been a lot of fun, and want to thank Virginia Hayes and Dan Miller did the original one. Pete Damiano put the stakes all around, and it's fun to be able to watch people use it, so it's exciting to see what this can look like.
Lisa Haverkamp herself is chair of the tree board.
And we have a report from the DNR for the tree species, and his comment, Mark Vitosh, was, you got a lot of invasives to work on down there, so.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh my gosh, yeah, so, but this is really exciting.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the biking down through there, but I don't know which biking, what trails would be ones that you would consider.
Well, at the end of the day, it'd be up to the council to determine whether or not you want to make biking trails or just have them be walking nature trails. So.
Sheila, John, or Dave, yeah? Oh, okay, Sheila. Sheila Pinter.
No, just happy to see with the integrated project between concept A and concept B, the removal of the plaque. I just don't think that suits our goal. And I think the really important point is to keep the end state in mind, is that this is a community asset, not a regional asset. So that will help us, kind of target in there. And the love for what they've done. I'd also be interested in knowing the lengths of each of the loops. And I'm also a little bit concerned about the blue loop. Of course, I haven't taken a super close look at it, but is there, abilities to make that blue loop shorter? So.
Can you pull that back up, Mike, just the concept? So I can see. The one thing that we spent some time on that's important to note is the paved loop. We spent a lot of time figuring that out. That's the white one, which really provides an opportunity for a nice overlook. The blue one
You want to talk about the Ryan on the blue one a little bit? That was a more of a kind of aggressive, trail, right?
That's right. Our goal was to make in this concept was to make these as easy to walk on as possible. This is also at a master plan level, and so we did navigate these slopes together, and wanted to kind of err on the side of being conservative in the way that we're representing these routes. It's possible as we get further into the design process that um, they may be able to kind of back down to a green, depending on the width and the cross slopes that we're faced with as we kind of do these switchbacks. In particular, the areas off of the commuter lot where you're switching back across some pretty steep topography in the north side of the forest. Those are the ones that kind of set the color for the rest of the trail. They try not to change up the color of the trail once you're on it, and so that's why those are colored the way that they are. I would say more than half of the blue trails here will probably feel like green, but there are some water crossings as well, which kind of we want to represent. We want to make sure was represented as these are going to feel a little bit different, at least in areas, compared to the actual designated green trails we had further east.
Ryan, could you speak on the length of the trails? Could you remind me what the lengths are?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have it pulled up for individual segments right now, but in our final concept, we have about 2 miles of single track across the blue and the green, and then about a 1/4 mile of double track. And then
John,
the
wanted to speak?
Can I just ask a couple questions? I'm very excited about using this property, and I have myself been walking it quite a bit for the last 2 years. But basically, since I started thinking about retiring in 22 and then did retire, I've been out there a lot, and I'm a bird watcher. I don't ride bikes. So I'm actually more interested in it as a walking trail than as a biking trail, but you know, I understand we need to have the multiple use. And I think I think the double wide trail, I didn't like the sound of that at first, but obviously there has to be some handicap accessible area, and I certainly salute you for doing that. What I wanted to ask is there was some mention about lighting earlier, and I wondered if you were thinking there would have to be lighting in that portion of the trail. I'm a little worried about the impact on birds if you do anything like that, but is that something that's contemplated? Other than that, I will just say that I think some interconnections with the trails would be nice, so that there's some changeable or something, so you can do the long version or the short version. Right now, there's a little bit of that. So those are kind of my questions, but I really am very glad to have us doing something.
Yeah, thank you. It's to answer your question about lighting, it was something that we discussed through this, like, is this going to be lit? Is it, again, that was part of when we deviated away from identifying this as a commuter route. So we don't want folks walking out here after dark. It's kind of similar to a city or county park where the whole point of this is to get folks out into nature and to do our best to have a low impact approach to development here to make sure we don't impact the wildlife or even plant life can be impacted by lighting after dark. So currently lighting is not represented in the plan. And then as far as kind of interconnectivity of the different loops, they are designed to function both as individual circuits or kind of concentric loops. So you could do just the double track trail, or you could get on at the double track trail and make your way around the every single trail is all interconnected from there. And I understand you guys have had limited opportunities to zoom in and look at all the different plans in advance of this meeting. But that was one of the goals, is to make sure that everything was interconnected either through existing on-street or off-street trails or through the new trail system we proposed here.
Thank you. David Giese, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, so a couple of questions that I had, being the multi-use program that we're looking forward to here. Has there been any insight to overlaying any other projects in conjunction with these trails? Like a fishing pond back in there you got the water there already. Put some ponds in that some ducks could go to, or you could go fishing, you could hike the trail. Go do some fishing and then move on instead of just making a trail system.
I don't believe that's been part of any of the discussions so far, David.
But that's an idea
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
putting out.
I would just like to see
People.
some sort of water use back there in conjunction with everything else.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And anyone on Zoom, I see Pat Yagi and Bob Fromm are there. Would anybody want to talk about give your opinion? Want to give you the opportunity?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
So I think at the beginning you talked about the overall acreage of the project, and the Swisher track is about 13 acres or so. But the whole project is about, I think he said 37 acres. So there's a marriage between the university property and the Swisher track. How does that work? How has that been, navigated? Who represents the university, or how do they get involved in this?
Well, early on, I've spent a lot of time working with the university over the last 25 years on projects like this. So I know early on, you want to kind of tee it up, make sure they know somebody's talking about their property. So, I did, and I spent several times, I've had several meetings with David Keff, who is one of the chief folks that's involved in these sort of developments. Nick and I actually met with him with Tim Schroeder once, after coffee, and they are all queued up, and it'll be received very positively, this sort of partnership. They asked, as I mentioned early on, whether or not we would hold off this presentation until they could think through it a little bit more. They didn't want to, they're very sensitive during session. So that's the reason why we waited until the session ended before we talked about a project that involved a partnership with the Board of Regents. So land. But David is very, very confident, so much as I just met with him last Friday. He said, hey, we're gonna be good to go. We'll just have to figure out what's the best arrangement, whether we do just a lease agreement of some kind with the university, or we, insurance purposes, things like that.
That'd be my concern. We invest all this money and say 10 years from now, they change their mind.
Yeah.
They want to put a sports something up
Yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah.
and then we out of that money because it's their
Completely
land.
fair, yeah. Very fair, and it could happen. David's very confident that this land has never been developed, and it would be incredibly costly to develop. And if you walked it, you know it. Originally, that university, is it University Atway? There was some thought, or somebody had brought up that was expected to continue on up to Finkbine Commuter Drive. And Dave's like, that never was talked about realistically.
That's why it's never been developed.
Yeah.
Just but you look at Camp Cardinal now, that was the same way, and now they're
Yeah,
flattening
yeah.
that thing off and throwing in houses and bulldozing down trees left and right.
It's a very fair thing to consider. It'd be like a leasehold improvement on a space that you don't own, at the end of the day, if they're gonna take back their 24 acres, that section of the trail would be gone. But I would hope that the university and David would do some sort of 10, 20-year plus partnership on this.
I share. Sorry, go ahead.
Question about maintenance.
Yeah.
So you get it together with what kind of maintenance that you talked about in between?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, Ryan. Do you recall, annual ongoing maintenance? I mean, I know we could get those numbers from ICOR with some of the Coralville stuff, but do you have a ballpark estimate on something like that?
I don't off the top of my head. I know that that's something that Ken provided some feedback on too, and I just don't have those offhand, but we can pull that together.
Percent or something. I mean, there's a percentage that he had estimated.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I don't remember what the percentage was.
I know that we actually we granted a mower a couple times to ICOR from our organization who does the Coralville single track. And it's not much. I mean, it's a lot, mostly the costs come with when you have to do those bridges and the bridge work. And when you get some of that deterioration, but the trail itself is pretty manageable once you get it cut in there and with the trail mower a couple times a year. Yeah.
How do we handle situations like liability? You know, somebody trips and falls down, half of it's University of Iowa, half is us. How do we handle that?
I don't know that. I would defer to probably the attorney, but I know that every city has these. And so I would probably start by looking at what Iowa City does with their parks. Coralville's doing with theirs, and I would assume it's an address system. Yeah.
John, you had a
Yeah, I had
question?
another question, briefly, I just wanted to clarify, in the cost of the project, I didn't understand that there was anything for getting rid of the invasives. There is a pretty big problem with invasives, just in our little spot I've been going bird watching. So I don't know, is that left to be, another phase?
How would you answer that, Ryan?
It's something that is not included in the costs as part of this specific trails or multi-use trail master plan. What this, I think, one opportunity as part of this project in seeking out, you know, that 80% of grant funds is that this does align with, this could be dovetailed in with a environmental restoration kind of centric project where you are removing invasives, and you know, part of that cost of doing that kind of work could be supported by the development of the trails to actually get you out to those areas. So it's the kind of low-hanging fruit, but it wasn't something we specifically built into this exact plan about where those invasive species are, where the trails are currently aligned. These are really more in response to topography and existing, you know, conditions regarding the roadways and parking lots and things like that.
Want to clarify, it's not a criticism. It's pretty good.
And in my experience in all the different locations that I've lived, we have community events that will actually go in. They're supported, you know, by grants or whatnot, but the labor is from the community or from scouting teams or, you know, and along the Potomac. And then and it provides ownership, it creates, you know, that community and really successful projects around the country. You know, that help with the invasives, and it's an educational aspect of it as well.
Would anybody else like to speak or counsel or anything at this point?
I have
Yeah, oh,
two considerations.
Troy, thank you.
For Josh and Ryan, and I realize we're still in the conceptual phase, but for final design consideration, that southwest corner, the university has double the size of that parking lot. It does not affect this current design, but it does affect one of them now. So the project lines, there's actually a parking lot within them. And then the second, where the proposed parking lot is to the north of One University Way, with that access down One University Way, that is a private drive for this complex. So I don't know as far as acquisition or right of way or things like that, easement, but I'm not sure how that would all play in, given the nature of this building and the fact that the city has some access to this. But anyway, just considerations for
Yeah,
finding that.
you know, my opinion on the whole thing, as I've looked at it for months now, talked to Ryan about it, is if the city wanted to move forward with all of this, I almost think the parking lot is the thing that can be cut first from the plan. Because I don't see it as a drive-to destination
Right.
trail system. I think that if somebody wanted to park, I would imagine they can park here and go for a walk, right, in this lot? Or is that not allowed?
No.
If you have, no, well then,
Depends on when you wanna go.
they'll have to park somewhere, but I didn't see it as a drive-to destination trail system. So, I don't know, I mean, that's the only place we thought of it. There is a spot off of Sunset, before, just to the right, that's actually already graded, that you could turn and park some cars on some existing graded land. But then again, you're driving through the neighborhood to go to park, and you don't wanna do that.
Well, I remembered when the OUP was discussed, that had to be kept open. So in case, so University of Iowa had an opening to go in and out. I mean, you
And
know,
I'm just throwing it out.
I know,
as a-
I'm
as a
just saying,
consideration for
it
your
had to be
planning
put
consent.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
In
I,
case of development.
I've talked to Kevin Munson and walked it with him and I don't know if you've talked to him at all, but, I've talked to people that live in the North Building, including, you know, some people are on the board, so I think they don't want anything in their backyards, but it seems like they're pretty receptive to this in terms of what is generally laid out here. But I agree with you, the parking might be the first thing to go and it help the cost too, so, yeah. See.
Well,
We're
oh,
gonna
you
make
want to
one
say
comment,
comment,
yeah.
Mike?
What I notice is somebody who's back there a lot, and I think what we've heard from the community tonight, where I'm moving the mouse up and down, that's the edge of our University Heights. That's our boundary.
Yeah.
So almost all of the bike trail is on the University of Iowa land. And so if you think about that in terms of conflict, where this is the brighter green, that's what I always refer to as the Sunset Loop, and then you go down and then you come across on the Glencrest route. Those are pretty much there and as is, and widening those, I don't think you're gonna see many other people using it other than the neighborhood. If somebody were gonna come, they're gonna come do the Blue Trail and use the university land more. That's how I see it, is it's almost two pieces, even though it's all one big chunk of land, that boundary does kind of separate two possible user groups in a way that I think.
Yeah, with the exception of the hard surface
Right.
trail, which
Right.
is a really beautiful, when you get out on that piece of land.
Yeah, and that's where I would, because it is, if you think, here's our municipal boundary, it's 30 feet beyond that back building and everything else is university where that tall grass is, which is, and this is what I'd always mentioned, that if we ever did want an ADA compliant area that you could have, that would be easy for a wheelchair. This pushes it out even further, but it is flat.
Yeah.
And that would be why you may want a parking lot, would be if you did have a wheelchair user, you could get them down to that point and then get them to use it through there, but anyway, sorry.
Thank you.
So is Freedom Little, like, I'm curious where those trails are, there's so much.
That's all
So
for
that's part of it.
the trail. Happens all the time on the other. trails.
Well, I have always made a note to myself not to go down into the green area. That's where I go bird watching. I don't go down there when the wind's really blowing. Because there's a lot of timber up in the. Yeah.
We watched the night of the duration.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is helpful to the group to get some feedback. And we have done in the past, like open houses and had things set up here and then people can walk through and comment. And I'm sure the council will work towards more public input. The city wants as much public input. Thank you all for coming tonight. That was a great presentation. Appreciate it all and appreciate you coming in on Zoom. And I don't let my husband come very often, but
Yes, thank you,
He's
Josh.
kind of passionate about this.
Thank
I
you,
couldn't
Josh.
stop him.
Thank you, Josh, so much, and Ryan. It really is amazing how technical this is. I did not appreciate how much work goes into it. I mean, when you walk it, it's impossible to walk a lot of this. And to know the topography and know where the trails will go, I think is pretty amazing, so appreciate it.
Well, we'll wait to hear from you. Everybody's got my number. I talk to Nick and Tim all the time, so, enjoy whatever
Yeah.
additional help we can provide, and when you're ready as a community to move forward, some of this will be right there with you. Thank you.
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Anyone else
Thanks
like to-
again.
Thank you for
Yeah.
the support of.
Thank you very much.
Last month. So Iowa City, it's in my report, I think the city contributed to our food and beverage for our
Yes,
bike
they
project.
did.
So thank you very much for that.
And we're gonna take a 2-minute break here before we go back to the meeting, just so we can walk around a little bit and then, so it's 8:10, so at 8:12, we'll be back. Thank you, everyone. I gotta.
Locking up.
I don't know. Fifteen and we're done. Thank you. It's 8:15 and we'll continue with the meeting. And David Geezy told me that he missed public input. He had a few things he'd like to say, so we'll go to public input. David Geezy, why don't you give your address for us?
Yeah, my address is 1138 Melrose Avenue. So I'm at the bottom of the hill down in there. Years gone by, couple of my boys did some Eagle Scout projects down on the corner for the city park, as it's labeled. Kendall ended up doing the bike rack and some landscaping, and Kurt ended up doing some shelter work, which has processed and gone by the roadside now. What I was asking for council to consider and maybe propose is, after the recent passing of Kendall, he was in law enforcement and was wondering about the possibility of it being named the Kendall Vesey Memorial Park, and then earmarking it towards fallen police officers on that part of it. So that was one of the considerations that I would propose on that part of it. The other public input that I wanted to potentially address was the retaining the parking on Melrose. So you guys are talking about redoing some, potentially the retaining walls again. I think that as far as the taxpayers' monies go, and as far as public safety, ideally, when a lot of these projects are coming through, it's for the public's safety that these projects are coming through. The east end of town, so when you're coming in on Melrose, there's only 24 inches between the curb and the sidewalk. And we've got another 5 yards of property, probably a little bit more, maybe in some of the spots over there. So if a person was gonna be rearranging intersections or spending money for city improvements, east end over here would be far better as far as public safety is concerned.
You mean the west end?
Yes. That other east end. The other east end. I know years gone by, we've had a lot of issues with snowplows covering the sidewalk with snow because it's so close right there. And then the city signage that has to be in that stripping there also. If you're going down the sidewalk, it's right there at head level. When you're walking by it, at least my head level anyway, on that part, and then it's just right at the edge of the curb on that part of it also. So that's my input. When we redid the intersection down by Stella's and we the city, widen that intersection out there, we put those retaining walls in, so you'd have better line of sight down at the intersection on that part of it. To go ahead rip that back out to move it back even more, I don't justify our tax dollars to see that be a big improvement on our standpoint.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
No paving bricks in the intersections.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
Just go back to my tax.
And so we'll go on to mayor's report, and in every report I read something about the farmer's market, I read something about the bike breakfast, so that's already been reported, but I do want to say, and Harold Plate has been noted too. We presented Harold with a plaque, last Friday on the last day of school with the chief and RJ and Stephanie and myself, and I just want to thank publicly Harold Plate for his 13 years as our crossing guard. It's been wonderful, and Harold was very pleased to receive these things and acknowledgement. And so when you see Harold, thank him too. Thank you. And so we'll go on to legal report. You have a couple things.
Couple things. Yeah, so the first thing on the report, the one element of the Melrose Avenue Complete Streets project calls for asking a couple of property owners to give up driveways right across from Stella, but near the intersection of Crozer and Gulfview, Melrose. If you go down there, I'm not a traffic guy, but I don't think you have to be. I don't think those driveways would be allowed today if they were new. Of course, there wasn't so much traffic back there at the time, but in any event, as part of the plan, early on, the discussion point was, is there any way you think we could talk about asking these folks to give up their driveways and access on the Melrose? And one of those properties, 1009 Melrose, not only has a driveway, but it's almost like a parking, well, it's parking area in their front yard. And so there've been conversations with these property owners, like Nick and Carla Lowenthal, and they're willing to have that discussion. The discussion, it's a little more than preliminary, but certainly far from final. Council will have to take some action, but Mike, could you pull up the legal report that we possibly? I don't know the history of this. Look at that. Yeah, that image. I don't know the history here, but so what's outlined in blue there is just from the GIS assessor's website. That is 1007 Melrose Avenue. I don't know, what the history of that L shape is. So as I said, it's got a driveway onto Melrose, but then it also, the lot itself, takes that easterly turn and goes straight out onto Olive Fork. And so it lends itself, because of that, fairly easily to thinking about having, as an exchange, having some parking for 1007 and 1009 in their backyards, right? I say it lends itself because there is access from Olive Fork to 1007 because 1007 owns what's shown in blue there. The idea would be that 1007 would grant a permanent easement for the owner of present and future owners of 1009 to be able to gain access to the area behind 1009 and allow some parking there for the residents of 1009. So as I said, there's been, something more than preliminary, but way less than final discussions about that. But moving forward to the point that it's clear that there would be required to have some kind of change to the zoning ordinance to allow for parking in the places that I just identified. The details of that aren't decided, even on a preliminary basis, at least not the specifics. Brian might be able to speak more to that, but for starters, because it requires a zoning change, I asked to have an agenda item to set a hearing on proposed changes to the zoning ordinance for the next council meeting. Between now and then, we'll get some detail out to everybody about what the proposed changes would look like to the zoning ordinance. And then ask that the council hold that hearing in July. So, so the resolution 2522 would set that public hearing, and notice would be published, and ask that the notice of the hearing be put on the city website, and then once the materials are available, ask that those be put on the website as well.
Could I get a motion first and then we'll have discussion later? A motion?
So moved.
Motion by Nick. Is there a second? Second by Lisa. Okay, discussion. Okay, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone absent, motion carries 4-0, 1 absent.
Thank you. And Steve, are you passing the ball to Nick here?
I don't know. So the next issue is related precisely to the first issue, in some instances, but so me and my office have a conflict of interest in representing the city. Two of my law partners, who became law partners after our firm kind of took on some people from the Mearden law firm. So, some of these discussions that I've had with the law firms, I didn't have any conflict of interest because they were represented by somebody not in my firm. Those folks are now in my firm, which is great. But that creates a conflict of interest. And then Paul Moore, also, has been a longtime client of our office. And, there are issues that impact Paul's property, the Stella building, among others. And so, I prepared a conflict of interest waiver. And, it's an odd situation for me because I can't tell you that I have a waiver and then tell you what I think about it, except, I mean, like whether I think you should, it's completely the council's decision, except to say, and I hope I made this point clearly, but one, there's lots of places in a lawyer's life where, you see a present conflict or potential conflict, and you just say, well, that's just, no way I could do that. Even if your clients say, no, could we just waive a conflict? For some situations, we can't do that. And this situation is not one of those. I wouldn't even suggest it to the council, but that's all I'll say about it.
Okay, Nick. Did you
Yeah.
want to make some comments since you're the lawyer in the room?
Well,
Another-
I want to be clear, Steve can't advise on whether or not to sign it or agree to it, support it. I also cannot advise, give legal advice to council on whether to support it or not as an attorney. But I can tell you that I am comfortable with the waiver personally. There are certain conflicts from my review of the situation, there are certain conflicts that you can waive. And certain, well, again, I don't want to give legal advice. My perception of this conflict is that, in my opinion, it's a waivable conflict. I trust too, knowing Steve's reputation and being, having had the pleasure to work with him on council and in other matters over the years, that if he saw a conflict arise that was not waivable, that he would let council know. I also think that, the issues that, well, what will be at issue here, I don't think is something that is, from my perception, I'm trying to hedge my words a little bit, but it doesn't seem like something that is gonna go to the core of legal advice, right? We're gonna have to have a plan here. It's gonna cost the city something probably to make these changes. I wouldn't look at Steve as being a real estate expert who is going to be telling us you know, how much the city should or shouldn't pay to these landowners. My memory of our last regular meeting was that we enlisted an appraiser, that was not the cheapest appraiser, but the appraiser who had the most experience in this kind of, dealing with this kind of issue. And so I'm comfortable, you know, taking it a step at a time, waiving the conflict now, understanding that it could present itself in a more serious way in the future. If it did come down to a situation where the city's interests seem to be, very counter to Paul Moore's or the, you know, or Leventhal's interests, then we may have to look at that, again, I would say at that point. But I haven't seen that in my experience. It seems like it's been pretty collaborative in terms of working with especially Paul Moore. That he's been interested in accommodating the city. That's just been my experience throughout, especially talking, you know, with Ryan about, you know, potential changes that would really impact his property. It didn't seem like it was, you know, we're on the different sides of a V at this point. So trying to think of what else to add. I've asked Steve some questions coming to this meeting about, you know, I guess I just would maybe say it publicly, you know, it's good to, if Steve did see something that he thought was close to the line, I would appreciate just, even if he doesn't think it's a per se conflict of interest, you know, allowing the council to maybe understand the issue, you know, at the time. Understanding that if advice could impact the city versus these landowners in some way, then maybe we could just, you know, get that on the table and analyze it at the time. I don't see that from my experience, and I guess reviewing the issue, it doesn't seem like the legal advice or the legal work for the city is going to prejudice the city, even if he has law partners that represent these people. Steve, can you think of any other questions I asked you before?
Yeah, no, I think you've hit most of them, Nick. I mean, I appreciate what you said, and I agree. But to me, as I look down the road as far as I can, you know, the legal part of, I think what's gonna happen, is gonna be driven by the engineering part and the appraisal part. I mean, there will be a discussion about, compensation for taking, is the legal phrase, but there's some right of way that's being acquired, there are easements that are being acquired, not just for these properties, but for others. And then, as Nick noted, an appraiser has been engaged, you know, in that regard, and as Nick noted, I'm not a real estate expert, whether I had a conflict or not, I'm not gonna start telling the council, I mean, here's what you ought to do, but real estate interests. And as Nick noted, if what I've said in my comments in my report and in that waiver, if that changes, I mean, for example, if somebody says, no, I don't want to have the city do this, well then, you know, there's something called eminent domain. The city can sort of take, again, that's the phrase, the city can take property. That's an adversarial, that's the conflict, I'm out, and so the part. And that's true whether the council waives this conflict for now and later it develops, or whether people were saying that right now, I wouldn't even be suggesting it. So if things change, absolutely, that'll be something on my mind, and I'll tell you.
Comment. Steve brought this to my attention last month when we were going through this process with Ryan, and we had much of the same discussion that Nick just walked through. I additionally asked Steve and wanted to make sure that he didn't feel basically some sort of sense of duty to represent the city, even though he might have some internal conflict on that. And he assured me that he does not have any internal personal, I don't know, unease about being put in this position. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, with the rather major exception that, as a lawyer, I don't spend my life doing this very often, it's usually you say, okay, there's an issue, we don't deal with this, but given the circumstances here, yeah, no, I don't feel like I'm drawn to the city. I've been the city attorney for a long time, of course, but that doesn't impact, my analysis. I appreciate you mentioning it.
Yeah, and also I would say, one thing about our profession is that it does, I think as a huge positive for the profession. There are consequences if there is a problem. And so, as Steve was alluding to, it's a lot easier for the attorney to just say, I'll step out of it. I think we would incur a lot of unnecessary costs to get another attorney brought up to speed to handle what we've been looking at Steve handling that falls into the category of things that have this conflict of interest. So that's where, I think the balance for me also comes out, is just that, the cost of bringing someone up to speed for a conflict doesn't really make a difference at this point. Understanding also that I just can't imagine if the conflict arose that we were unaware of, that Steve wouldn't bring that to our attention, because again, as an attorney, it's not something, I don't see where his interests are, really at issue here. It's more the city saves money by not bringing another attorney in and paying them to get brought up to speed. So for what that's worth, I expect that.
Any other comments, any councilors? No? We're comfortable. Looks like council's comfortable.
Didn't sound like it's a problem until it's gonna be a problem.
More concise.
Good.
That's,
Well
that's
said.
short.
Yeah.
Well said. Okay, so the motion, the resolution, that was 25-23, correct?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Nick. Is there a second? Second by Lisa. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone absent. Herbold.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0, absent.
Thank you very much. So any other questions for Steve, or? We have another agenda item for you here in a little bit. So we'll go to city administrator report. Troy sent around his report, and what comments would you like to make?
There are two housekeeping items that I need to put before council. Those are items 1 and 2 in my report. One is resolution number 2520, the 28E agreement with Johnson County for paratransit services for the upcoming fiscal year. The city of University Heights contracts separately from Iowa City. They contract directly with Johnson County Seats for paratransit services. We do that every year. It's a yearly agreement. This year's agreement is unchanged from last year's agreement, with the exception of the dates of the term. Per the agreement, the city will continue to pay a per ride fee of $30. Our use has varied from 2 to 4 residents. I think we're currently at 2. This is an agreement that dates back, I believe, to Councilor Jim Lane, I think. But anyway, I would offer to council that resolution for consideration and approval.
So moved. 2520?
Yes.
So moved.
So moved by Nick. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by
Jim.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone absent. Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0, absent.
The item number 2 is confirmation of city staff compensation for the upcoming fiscal year. This has already been discussed as part of the budget process, discussed and approved. The 3% across the board for all city staff, non-contracted employees, but city staff, police officers, city clerk, meaning it's all listed on the attached table that I have. The table reflects a 3%, it reflects current pay rates, and then what the pay rate will be with a 3% increase. This item is necessary to satisfy our annual examination. So even though we've discussed these numbers and approved it as part of the budget, I need to put it before, I need council to consider a motion to approve the pay raises to satisfy our annual examination.
Yeah, so is there a motion? Motion by Lisa. Is there a second?
No, second.
Second by Doug. Okay, are you ready to make the vote? Are you ready to vote, council? Okay, if no further respect, all in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0 and 1 absent.
And the rest of my report stands as written. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you to the mayor, to Jeff Spikinski, to Think Iowa City, to Lisa and everybody else who volunteered their time to make the bike breakfast a success. It was a chilly morning, but it was well attended.
Thank you. Any other questions for Troy? Thanks, Troy, for all your work here. Then we'll go to Mike, city clerk report.
In addition to my report, the only other thing we have this month is Maggie's Farm. Class C liquor license is up for renewal. They have completed all their paperwork with the Alcoholic Beverages Division. Chief Akers has run background checks. Inspector Gert has done structure and food inspections on that. So staff would recommend that you approve a Class C liquor license for Maggie's Farm Pizza.
Is there a motion? Motion by Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nick. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0 and 1 absent. Thank you very much. And anything else, Mike?
We are almost to the end of liquor license renewal season because next month we will have the Marriott's liquor license and we will. April through July tends to be liquor license season.
And then you'll start on
Reynolds.
Reynolds.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is a big thing. Yeah,
yeah,
very good. Thank you, Mike.
sure.
And then John Brown is here on Zoom for the treasurer's report. And John submitted the warrants. And are you there, John? Oh, there's John.
Stop right here. I forgot. I was
Oh,
gonna pull up my newer version that had the warrants on it. John, you're still on mute.
is.
I am?
Yes,
Yes, there you are.
You're good.
Okay, you're good now.
Thank you, John. And so you sent around the warrants today, and then
Yes.
I see there was one correction by Ryan. That we were gonna pull the.
Sustainable.
Yeah, who was it? LL Pelling,
Sustainable landscape.
Sustainable Landscape.
Okay,
Until permeable pavers, so we're not going to pay that until it's all done and approved.
okay, I'll pull that.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
And so did everyone have a chance to review the warrants? Are there any other additions that you received, John or Mike, since then? Okay. Is there any objection to paying the warrants? Hearing none, the warrants will be paid by unanimous consent. Thank you. And anything else, John, to add?
No, ma'am, not this time, no.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the first one is finance. And this is the resolution 2524 about the special assessments and the special revenue to move to debt service for the payment. And this was in your report, Steve, right?
Yeah, I just kind of carrying water with Steve Cool, but yes.
Right, and so you're okay with him doing that? Okay, so here it is, the transfer of funds, the resolution 2524. And are there any questions about it, or do you need, you know? we
I
need-
move for passage of resolution number
Okay.
2524.
Okay, motion by Nick, is there a second? Second by Lisa. Okay, any further discussion?
I guess, I don't know, for the community, maybe we should just clarify quickly what we're doing, in case anyone's listening in. It's just basically transferring, I don't know, Steve, do you want to talk about it? Or just transferring money where the money has been allocated to go from to get it into the right fund to pay what it needs to pay, basically.
That's exactly what it is. It doesn't change any of the city's expenditures. This has already been budgeted, and committed this way. The, you know, the debt service, you know, these are payments for bond payments that the city's obligated to make, and this, and there's a choice, and it's just a matter of, it's a matter of accounting. And it's just exactly what you say, getting things to and from the right accounts.
And anyone can read your legal report and it's all spelled out to the penny. Very good.
And they're in the resolution.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation. Roll call vote.
Swales.
Aye.
John absent. Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Carries 4-0-1 absent.
Anything else, Nick?
No.
Thank you. We'll go on to community protection, and the chief sent around his report with pictures.
Yes, lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures.
It was a busy or a very active month. So a lot of opportunities to interact with the community and, have some positive impact. I really have nothing to add. Does anybody have any questions?
I really, I want to publicly say how you framed up our new farmer's market sign. I don't know, I think you did it with your own supplies and your own, you know, which was very nice, because that sign is gonna stay straight instead of, you know, thank you for doing that, and thanks for your officers' help in always putting up the signs. That's been wonderful, really appreciated. And, yeah, thanks again for attending, and people love seeing you there. They all seem to, even the residents know you. They like talk to you a lot. Yeah, that's great to see you. Thank you.
It is heavy duty. I think I asked you what you're doing with the pipe when you're walking.
Go anywhere.
I think it's funny. That's great.
Yeah, I told him when he became chief, I said, the people are like, but we're not gonna see him anymore, you know, riding around, but he told me he still goes around and sees people, and I know he does, so. Yeah. The people wanted you to stay the officer, you know, right there. So anyway, great. So no other questions for chief. We'll go on to engineer report. All right, Ryan, you have a couple things, huh?
We had a couple things this month. Yeah,
You've been busy.
yeah, we had a lot going on this month, on the Melrose Complete Street project. Troy and I met with several property owners, including David Geesey, who's here tonight, and, for a couple week span, and then, giving them those properties that are part of the easement and acquisitions, kind of a layout of what the project entails, overall view. And then Cook Appraisal has begun their process for appraising the properties that they're going to on the project for those acquisitions, and then working through with them so far, kind of back and forth and coordinating that. The Blake Peterson, our design lead, has got his report here, so I don't know if there's any questions yet. I guess one big item that we were able to meet with Mayor Fromm and our electrical engineer to review some of the decorative light pole options, and I think Lisa Morris, Councilmember Morris, been provided some input as well. So the electrical engineer has got some additional information. We'll continue to coordinate with him on that and get some pricing of those light fixtures to the city. Is there any other questions on the Melrose thing before I move on from that one? Anybody? Okay.
It seems like it's back on schedule pretty good.
I mean, I guess I'd say that the schedule is all dependent on how the easement and acquisition process goes.
Yeah.
So sort of like Steve Ballard was alluding to, if everything goes smoothly and everybody's like, yeah, sure, like, let's do this, and we get the appraisals and offers, compensation offers in, we might be back on schedule. In that case, if there's any holdups or delays on actually acquiring the easements, like I've mentioned last month, we can't actually go to letting to bid. So, and that'd be for check plans for the DOT, we need that process complete, or at least a hearing scheduled for, I guess, when I say foreclosure, Steve, but that's not the right,
Just the taking.
the public takings, right? Yeah, if you have to do that, yeah, acquisition. So, And then there's a 3-month delay from our check plans to when we actually have our bid. So that process could delay things if there's any unforeseen hiccups there. So.
I wouldn't mind, so the light fixtures, I mean, the light poles and stuff, that is something that, Think Iowa City Group has been really kind of interested in. That would be something I think that'd be good to get community input on.
Okay.
People feel pretty strongly about the light poles.
Okay.
And so I think that is something that, hopefully Tim has some design ideas, I know, and like coordinating that with potential signage and benches. I mean, that's, I just think a really big topic. I think if we had light poles that were not popular, I think we would hear about that quite a bit. So I don't know if council has any other ideas on how to, I mean, that might be something too, like you were saying before, Louise, about like, public input sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
that's worked out good.
yeah, just,
You've been part of that.
yeah, no, I
Where-
just
Where they
wonder,
meet a couple of nights and you go, this is what we're
I
looking
think that's
at.
a great
And
idea.
cause it's like, some people can't meet on a Tuesday, so you have it on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday, several nights of it, so more people can do it. And then they write down comments too. That's worked well with like Olive Court
Yeah,
project.
I think that's my intent is to, like, especially after now, we've kind of preface the property owners that have the easements and acquisitions, that you're like, hey, here's what's coming, or here's what the plan is, right? Our layout, especially with the intersection realignment stuff was the big thing. We do need to have an open house, right? So we need to schedule that. We need to have sort of this public hearing, open house night it's probably not at a council meeting even. It's probably a whole separate night. And with exhibits and scroll plots, and then hopefully what we could do. So our initial meetings here on the light poles was trying to pare down because there's so many infinite number of options. Pare down, okay, this is the general style, at least from a smaller committee that they're wanting to see, and then probably propose several options potentially, and maybe we could discuss further about whether there's a voting system that we could do or something, if that's what the city's wanting to see from public that attends.
I think those can be a big part of the image of a community, like you see some that have, I'm not saying we want this, but like flower baskets in them. There's some that are old style, some that are modern, I think that is really a big question for the kind of what we were hearing, I think, from I call it the benches committee now, but like people really seem to be passionate about knowing you're in University Heights and having some sort of like benches, light fixtures, like some sort of comprehensive plan that makes you feel like you're in a separate town as opposed to in Iowa City. So I think that's great. The framework that the mayor's talking about to get public input would be great. And the more options, probably the better.
Yeah, and that's part of what we're reviewing right now is, I mean, we've had, I'd say, a pretty strong interest in getting, some type of banner. I'm trying to push for a non-cloth banner, some sort of aluminum or some sort of poly banner that would potentially have the city name or something like that on it that you see around a lot of communities anymore. And so there's.
Lisa and I drove over to
Yeah.
North Liberty and their metal banner looks like cloth, but and they used our colors, by the way. But it really looked like cloth and it is a metal banner. But the ones at Iowa River Landing, they look like metal. They're black and white and they look like metal, but it is amazing. And I think we have to go to metal and not cloth.
Well, Mike, Deb Tunwell had emailed you with, like some sort of design from, I don't know if you knew when that was from. But
Well, I responded to
Oh,
her.
did you respond to it? I didn't see
I
that.
responded to her and told her that we have the design that we're making for the 4 signs. And it's on our report. And I told her to look on, it's in the report of, well, you can show it maybe, the engineer report. Where the 4 signs, I asked Ryan about this a year and a half ago, and he has other priorities, but I've been wanting, oh, there it is. There it is. Troy has it.
Yeah.
And you had explained that it has to have the certain standards where it has to have the line around it.
Yeah.
And
so-
it uses the logo, and I just responded to her that we have been working on this. And we're working on fixing the signs in the city that are really bad too.
Yeah.
You know, all through the city and taking down some signs that are no longer needed.
Yeah.
Cause
I think
it's
that's
a
really
sign mess.
Yeah.
Kind of in some places, and we've been working on doing those things, and so I responded to her, Lisa and I actually responded to her kind of together. Because we were meeting and talking about the signage, and I go, oh, this is perfect timing, let's don't have her do all this work when we've. You know, so. Anyway,
Yeah, so if there is a PDF of that sign and it's basically going to replace the welcome to City of University Heights green and
The
white
green ones, yeah.
background
That
signs
green and
that are-
white faded sign,
Yeah. So those green and white lettered signs are the standard for MUTCD for city limit signs, like that's just what
Sure.
it is. And so as we started this process, you know, I met with the MPO actually to verify that I wasn't going to get us some hot water by putting these signs up instead of those, and they agreed that this would be fine. It's kind of more of like, sort of a city wayfinding or identification sign, and not necessarily like a county limit line, like maintenance type of, city limit sign, so. Cleared that hurdle at least, and then we went to work on utilizing the existing logo. And then kind of updating that with a border, which is required by MUTCD for roadway signs, and then also adding the city of above that was important for. For the folks that we had, discussion with, so,
and it's easier to read. And
yeah, so
the
we
right
are.
colors,
We've got this down now, I think, and I'm gonna send it out for for custom build, quotes for pricing, so. Yeah, from the same company, it's Iowa Prison Industries, we usually get our signs from, so. As far as the benches for Melrose, right now, we are not planning to add any benches, or trash receptacles or anything like that. Was something, my understanding from the kind of as I took over from Josiah was that was not desired, generally by the city, so. I think that stems from maintenance and who's taking trash bags out of there or anything like that, or maintenance of the benches in the future, so, or if they become jumping off points on football game days or something like that, you know, climbing and things of that nature, so. If there's different feedback that we need, then we would need to know if that's something that's desired, I guess, and maybe where those would want to be at, so. Let's see, just gonna hop back then. Is that everything for Melrose, I guess, before I move on? Good. Highland Drive and Ridgeview Ave, we had a pre-construction meeting, they've started work this week. I went around and handed out notices to anybody that answered the door, on June 4th on those two streets, and, the contractors started, they've milled off the asphalt overlays. I sent an email out to council after my report, but Mid-American Energy is relocating some wood poles, that are pretty much right behind the back of curb, today. And in that process, they augured into a water main on Highland Drive, and that's since been repaired, and, they were about to turn that water back on right before the meeting started tonight, so. Checked in with them right before I came over, so we're not off to the greatest start over there, but it will come together, I promise, and it'll be really nice in the end, but they've removed pavement on Monroe Street intersection. We'll have compaction testing tomorrow morning, and then they'll start rocking that one, and their paving crew will come in behind as they move over to Mahaska Drive intersection to do pavement removals there. Pavement markings, so I requested a quotation from LL Pilling Painting, who's done our painting for a lot of years now. We budgeted $13,000. Their total estimate originally came in at nearly 16,000, 15,800. In talking with them further, this was due to the way we've been doing this the last few years and utilizing waterborne and high build paint and high build in strategic spots to reduce how fast that was wearing off in certain high traffic areas. it was taking them more time because they had to switch the paint out in the truck. So I asked her how much would it be if we just did all of it as high build, $13,177.75. So we will save over $2,600 by just utilizing the higher grade paint, everywhere. And so I think it's been working really well in those areas we've been doing that to avoid having to, my understanding is previously they were doing 2 paintings a year with the waterborne in some spots. So I guess my recommendation would be just, let's do this and approve that price at $13,177.75. And that is, resolution number 2521 is toward that contract to LL Pelling.
Okay, so why don't we do that right now? Is
Yeah.
there a motion for that resolution? Motion by Doug. Okay, second by Lisa. Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Gone absent. Carries 4-0, 1 absent.
Very good.
I'll skip down to number 5 on my list, which was the sign maintenance, since we've already touched on this a little bit. So we've been coordinating with, city staff, Chief Akers especially, was instrumental in going around and reviewing a lot of the existing signage and particularly noting some like no parking signs between hours, this and this, that at some point over the years, somebody decided they want to change the time and they just put stickers over those to change the hour, right? That's the limit. So PD has compiled a list for us. I'm gonna give that one last glance and send it on to Russ Boyer to see if he has inventory of any of those signs right now. Otherwise, we will place an order for quite a few signs so that he can start a project to remove and replace those that are like that, or maybe dissimilar size, to try to come closer to standardizing all the similar types of signs throughout the city. As I have Russ check the inventory, part of the problem is I don't have access to the maintenance garage, so I can't do that, but I'll have him check the inventory and let me know if there's any need for additional signposts as well. That was a comment we had from PD, is some of the old U-channel posts are cut very short, right? So they're only 3 feet high off the ground, some of the no parking signs, so there may be a need for new posts as well. And then the city limit sign is something we already touched on. It's in my report here, but there would be 4 locations we'd be replacing that at, and it's one at each end of Melrose Avenue as you come into town, and then also the south end of Sunset and the south end of George Street at the city limits. So that's the anticipated locations for those signs. They would just replace the old green and white lettered signs. Sidewalk inspection program. So I had an intern and one other person from my office go around and inspect sidewalk panels and start painting those out per the resolution we approved last month. And we have started compiling all that data into our spreadsheets. So right now we're roughly at 80 properties, totaling nearly 130 sidewalk panels throughout the entire city. So we've looked at the entire city. They're waiting on me to give them final direction on it, just a couple that they had questions on. And then we would be ready to issue notices once council approves a resolution to do so. So that's kind of the part that we're at. I think a couple of the questions that were remaining from past discussions with council was one of them had to do with right-of-way trees and whether the city would pay for repairs of trees that are within the right-of-way. So City of Iowa City does do that. They pay for sidewalk panels that are impacted by trees that are within the right-of-way. Cedar Rapids does not, and Coralville does not. And I think that the ordinance for University Heights that notes that the adjacent property owner is required to maintain a tree that's within the parkway area, like trim it or take care of it, unless it's dead, would lend itself to sidewalk, right? That's damaged by that tree as well. It would be part of that maintenance process. So just to provide context on how many trees you're talking about, if the city were to elect to pay for those trees, we had 12 properties, upwards of 30 panels, marked that were impacted by trees that were within the right of way. So generally, those ones are gonna have 2 panels, right, raised up. So almost each spot has at least 2 panels. So. Let's see, I think there was another question about whether you would require a permit fee from everyone instead of just those that are, within, or just those that would be on the city's repair list. I think that was a question that Lisa had. So anybody that hired their own contractor in the past has not been required to pay a permit fee. That's something I think in talking with Steve is, yeah, a permit fee could be charged for anybody that hires their own repair out. I'm not aware of any other city that does do that way. I mean, talking with Iowa City about their program, and I know Corval's the same, where when they issue the notices, that's basically the permit to do the repair if they hire their own contractor. And then if you're within the city's project, generally that's when they tack on a fee to kind of administer hiring a contractor and coordinating the project overall, so.
Wouldn't it encourage people to just join the city project if you didn't tag on that thing? Something.
I mean, I would say potentially, yeah. It's more of like, I guess I would liken it to some sort of convenience fee at this point, right? That they wouldn't have to hire somebody separately themselves. They would just sort of end up taking care of itself because someone else is doing it.
The difference I see is that if you use the city program, I have more confidence that it's gonna be done well, and it's something that the public uses. Whereas if it was something on their private property, I get that, but since we want it done well, I tend to agree with Lisa that it'd be nice to encourage people to use the city program. Especially if we're not really inspecting that closely, the repairs that are done outside of the city program. I know that that's not what other people are doing. It seems just backward to me still. So my position would be, I'd like to incentivize people to take part in the city program. It's more convenient, but it also gives us, I would think, better sidewalks. I mean, do you disagree with that? I'm not saying, yeah,
No, I don't. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I suppose in larger cities, they're probably thinking the more people that do it themselves, the less that they have to do, right?
Sure.
It's because the fees that the city assesses just to like run that project, they don't cover the actual cost, right? So, so the fewer properties that they actually have to coordinate for now, they would have probably well over what we're looking at, right, as an entire city though, so. Just for their single zones per year, so. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably just more of a, how does the city wanna proceed with that? And then also, what can be difficult is if you issue that and you say you have to come in and pay $50 to hire your own contractor, and I guess, it's not very much different than you would expect someone to get a building permit if they would, but if they don't pay it, then I guess we have to send them letters, right, to collect that fee, right? And then, also, and then potentially, you'd send them an invoice and then potentially assess their taxes for that, right? For whatever that fee amount is.
I think if we just do a program and we make it hopefully efficient and don't tack on fees, then hopefully people will use it. If they go it alone and they do a good job, I guess nobody knows the difference and they don't have a permit fee, but if they do it poorly, I guess they'll probably just get marked up in the future because it will not last. That's what.
Yeah, and we would be back checking, so if it's that bad, it would be forced to be redone, and, we would probably just find a way to contact them again and let them know we're going to remove it. So, I've had that happen in other cities before, where somebody like used Bagcrete or something, right? And it's very obvious that that's what they've done, so, yeah, we replaced it for them, so. So I guess what I'm hearing from Nick is that there'd be no administrative fee placed on anyone even after, that's what you're asking for, is that there'd be no extra fee other than just the cost of construction charged to the residents that are within the city project. Is that what you're?
That's what I'm brainstorming, throwing out there. I think also I wonder if the deadline. You know, this gets tricky when you're getting a bid for the city work, but if we could have the deadline for people who are not gonna take part in the city work to be earlier. So that you could potentially see if those people have not done it or not done it well. Prior to when the city comes in with their big project to do whoever signs up for it. Does that make sense in terms of that timeline? I'm not telling, I'm just asking.
I'm not sure I followed.
Well, so if we had a deadline whereby people who are not gonna take part in the city program had to have it fixed.
Mhm.
Then when the city program comes through and does all their panels, we could potentially do what you're saying and just pick up the ones that are not done and then send the bill.
Yeah, I don't know how the timeline works for the 3 years, kind of from 2015 to 2018 on that, but, the past projects I've been involved with is you set a deadline, we re-inspect, then we create the bid list based off of that, based off re-inspection, right? That says these ones weren't done or they were done poorly and they're gonna be added, and then we bid that out based on that. So I think maybe in the past they had overlapped that, like bid it out, and then the deadline was sometime maybe after the bid had come in, and maybe that's what you're speaking to, so. If there's time for that, that we can provide that before we bid it, we would try to do that, yeah. I mean, this.
But that also makes sense if you're just like, the people, you know, if additional have to be done, then that's not a cost savings project anyway, it's like, it's gotta be done.
Right.
So I get it, for the timeline, you might just need to get the city program going.
Yeah, and I think that's what would be key the next time around, because what we talked about is this would be maybe an every 5-year inspection and then just do the whole city every 5 years. So it's not continuously in one small part of town every single summer. So in future years, if we know this is what we're doing and, you know, future councils like agree, let's keep doing this. It would be much easier to know and have all that in line and have these inspections done like in March, right? And not in June.
Sure.
So those notices could be sent out and people would have all summer, this summer or fall to do that repair. And then we would bid that out like December, right? We could re-inspect it by Thanksgiving or something and say, okay, now we'll bid these out and we can do the work right away in April or May or something the next year. So.
That's good.
So I guess I'm hedging myself and saying that might not be the timeline we have this year.
Yeah.
So when are?
So I
when
won't
is the
send out notice,
council
I won't
plan-
send out notices until we have a resolution from
Yeah,
council, and I
we
don't
need
have
that.
one on the agenda for tonight. I'm just kind of providing some additional input right now for council's consideration and thinking through, maybe give residents some time to let it sink in that there's pink paint on their sidewalks and give everybody some calls to talk through it, but Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but we will need a resolution that basically says that council's directing property owners to make these repairs. And so the intent would be right now that we would have that ready for you for the July meeting. And then we could issue the notices, so.
We need to be clear about the ones that are affected by the tree roots and 30 panels.
Yeah, so that's, I would like to
Okay.
have direction on that, I guess. I don't know what that takes, but,
I don't think you want to separate those out. Freedom for trees for people. And I mean, I know there are obvious places where giant tree root was affected, but there are also places where hidden tree roots. I don't know that, I wouldn't really be in favor of doing it.
Treat it the same as the sidewalk fence. Don't
Yeah,
pay for those, yeah,
because then
I
that
agree.
muddies the question of who takes care of the trees too.
and then along those lines, I guess I generally our intent would be that those roots would be cut and the sidewalks would just be poured sort of straight in line through the same alignments that they were on originally, so. I guess I would just like to know from council that I have the support that that's the direction we're gonna go. We're not gonna have sidewalks be looping around trees, all over town, due to those types of hazards that are being caused by the tree roots, right? I guess that's my question.
I think safety first, and yeah, I get nervous about varying from that too much. I don't know, you think we're gonna be killing a lot of trees by doing that? I mean, you can't ever guarantee.
Yeah, I guess I couldn't answer that, I guess, yeah.
Is
Sorry.
that, do we have a tree person involved with,
Well,
Julie's tree recently?
we've
that we
used
could-
Black Squirrel if you mean
Right.
a tree person and, you
Is that
know,
who-
Will, for, you know, he's kind of our arborist. I have him go around and look at trees.
You think,
He'll do that.
you think he would be willing to give an opinion on some of those? Like,
Yeah, I think he would.
just so we
actually.
can know if we're.
I
gonna
think,
kill a
I think
tree
he
when we-
would, actually, and
Well,
Troy's worked with him a lot too.
Well, locations, Bernie?
And whenever we made a request, he's done it within like days.
Well, cause I almost wonder if he'd be able to spot it in advance, like if that route is going that direction, can we? I don't know, trim it, I don't know how routes work, it's like if you can trim up
I
that,
know,
like before
I
they
think
start
That's,
damaging the sidewalk, or if that's not a thing.
I don't know about that, I guess, I'm not sure.
That's a big can. of
I don't
worms.
know about that.
Yeah, I guess,
He would.
he might
He might.
be able to tell us if, there's a way, but. He would be, you're asking if he would inspect sort of like every tree that's near the sidewalk, sort of like for that. Future,
Yeah, I'm not trying to make this a big deal, I just wonder if. There's
Right.
a way to get ahead of it in the future, if he's like walking, he could opine, like, yeah, they just. You know, kind of do something here, saw that down a little bit on the top, maybe it will go deeper and it'll be fine, or. I don't know, I don't know how it works, I'm just saying that.
You never know if it's the main artery or whatever they call it, and because when we did the white sidewalk with Paul Moore, you know, we were severely cutting into the root and they seemed to be fine. And then it was around 6 or 7 years. Bam. I mean, one fell. And it fell on Wednesday. It was gonna come out on Friday. And nobody was hurt on Melrose. It was kind of a miracle. But, you know, so they tell you, well, we don't know for sure. It might not be the main thing, but the tree lived quite a long time. Severely pruned, and then he took both of them down eventually. But Will, you know, we got Black Squirrel because of our derecho. And they were the only company that would help us, you know, when you're in the middle of a derecho and you're calling me, I'm not interested, I'm really busy, I'm not in. You know, Black Squirrel came to our rescue and did that, so and Troy has told me how he's done good work for, you know, and he's
Yeah, he
called
did
them
great
for
work
things.
from-
Yeah, and so that's how, and we really trust him, and sometimes I think, oh, he's gonna say that tree's dead. And he goes, no, the tree's fine, and I don't, okay. So, I don't know, but at least I kind of knows, because we discussed some of the trees too. And how Will has been really prompt, so if we have special areas, I'm sure we could call him.
yeah, I think Will would come out, assess them, and we could, sort of, once we would have that input from
I
him,
think
we
it's a
could
good
try and
question.
review if there's some other way to handle it.
So we're gonna go for the July 8th for the resolution. And I have
The
heard
only
from
other
like
thing-
3 residents on sidewalk markings, and I've talked to Ryan and he's been, on top of them, looking at them. I didn't tell you about one yet, but I haven't looked at it myself, but people see the spray paint and they've been asking questions. And maybe you've gotten a call, I don't know, I'm easy to get a hold of, you're not so easy.
I told him, oh, Aaron, you should dig that concrete.
Yeah,
right away.
So,
I
Yeah.
So I think in the years past, I think it was only one one of the years that I could find for resolutions as far as the fee, right? The assessment fee for being on the city's project. That would be like sort of that last thing, within the literature that we want to mail out, so that people are aware of that, right? When we send out notices after next month, so. I don't think I have to have an absolute answer on whether we're doing that or not. We could probably make that adjustment after next meeting, but Steve, do you think do we need a resolution to do fees again? Probably.
Yeah, I think we'll find.
So we'll probably have two separate resolutions. One is ordering the repairs, and one is for the fee, and then we can just sort of make that decision at the July meeting on whether there'd be any sort of city project fee like there was before. It was $100 previously, I guess.
If someone reaches out and they're like, yeah, I see my pavement's marked, I'm interested in the city program, like what would I tell them would be their next contact about the city program?
I mean, we will mail them a notice, a certified letter. So that'll be, once we approve that requiring the repairs, like, we'll mail them a certified letter. If you're asking me for
And that will-
contractor contacts.
Well, if we're gonna try to do this city program where we're gonna fix a bunch of them, when will they learn about that? Will that be in that letter that there's gonna be a
Yeah,
bid and that they're gonna get an estimate, or they have to opt in to the bid, or?
yeah, they would have to opt in. I don't really think there's any way I can provide, a number that's going to be reliable, I guess I'd say, just due to the bidding climate and, factors I can't control, to tell somebody it's gonna cost $200 per panel or something like that, until we actually bid the project, so.
But the certified letter will mention that
Yeah,
there'll be a bid from the city of that.
So here's the letter from 2016. Sample. $100 administrative fee per property. And that's. I don't think we ought to charge that. It's a little work.
And I did reach out to a couple contractors, what they would charge per panel, so they would just have an idea of what we're looking at. So I got a couple more that I need to get a hold of that are interested in it. A lot of big cement companies, contractors, they don't want to mess with little side jobs like this, so got some smaller ones, but they do good work. I mean, I've known them for many years, so I can vouch for they do good work. They wouldn't be in business.
yeah.
And they're interested in doing smaller jobs like this, maybe in between jobs, and they've got several different crews. They've got like residential crews, ag crews, commercial crews, so they could spare a few guys.
Yeah, it's certainly not a project. I don't think in any city that like a roadway contractor size company is interested in doing. So yeah, it takes a smaller, generally a smaller company that we see bidding on these ones. So,
You know, get the concrete from the same place, so.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the mixes would have to meet the specifications for the city's standards. So.
I think they're running around $220 a panel now. And I say that because my stepmom in Johnston, which is just north of Des Moines, it's in the Des Moines area. The city charged sent a bill, we had one panel repaired and it was right around 220. I mean, it's a lot more than it used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah, Iowa City gave me some numbers from 2 years ago and some from last year. There was a steep increase between the 2 years. They were over $300 a panel last year. So, using that price, our total project could be $35,000 to $40,000 in total cost. So if all these properties are there. So
Do you have enough information from council to,
yeah, I think so. I think that kind of, as long as council's comfortable that I've answered all the questions kind of that we've gone over, or if there's any other remaining items I could research and respond to for the next meeting, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll have those resolutions ready for July. I won't be at the July meeting. I'll be out of country, so that's unfortunate timing on this, but,
Not for you.
yeah. So,
Well, you'll be working hard before you leave.
yeah, we had a
You've been really
vacation
busy.
planned a while back, so, yeah, I'll try and make sure everything is, pulled together, before I head out, so.
Yeah, okay. I think that covers everything, right, Ryan? Was there,
Yeah, I think that's everything on my report, unless there's any questions.
I think it's been very helpful. Too, okay, no other questions, so we'll go to, Tim,
Nothing to
building,
report.
zoning and sanitation, do you have anything? Okay, we'll go on to e-government, you sent around a nice report. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, is there any announcements?
One quick item that was
Okay.
mentioned by, in the city treasurer report, and Ryan didn't mention it. SLS, the payment for the work on the permeable pavers. That work was done. I know council's discussed it before. Ryan and I went out there and it did not meet our expectations, so that has been withheld for the time being. But we came up with a plan with SLS, so if you drive by and see them out there working on it again, that's because they're going out to, I think it was more of a miscommunication than anything, but they're going out to remediate the work they did. And then once it meets our satisfaction, we'll route payment again. But I know it was discussed by council before, and the work was supposed to have been done, and in case you see them out there again, that's what's going on.
Thank you, Troy, for doing that. So any announcements? Farmers market, please come to the farmers market every Tuesday. And is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned by unanimous consent. Thanks, everyone.